Good morning, Austin.
Hey, Dad, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back with you and have a new guest with us. I think this person many people will know by name, but I think they're going to get the experience inside his heart and mind, which I'm excited about. So let's get started. And today we're going to take a look inside the heart and mind of one of NFL's greatest teachers. For the last 50 years, the field has been his classroom, and many of us have been his students. His resume reads like a Hall of Fame ballot. McKay, White, and Majors, Coryell, Schottenheimer, Vermeil, and Gibbs. But this story is about communication, energy, enthusiasm, feedback, and passion. A lifelong learner, a mentor of men, and a coach who cared. My name is Ken Karcher, and I'll be your host. My son Austin is alongside me today, and today we'll take a look into the life of Al Saunders. We would like to welcome him to Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time. Welcome, Al.
Thank you, Kenny. Very kind words. I really appreciate that. Austin, good to see you this morning, and looking forward to having this conversation with the both of you.
Yes, sir.
Well, Al, let's jump right in and let's start back to when you were just a young guy growing up in the Saunders home. And I think it started, if I read right, in London, England. Tell us a little bit about your family, your parents, siblings, and the things you want to tell us about.
Yeah, that's where it started. My entire family are English. They're all from England. All of my relatives are still there that are still with us. I was born there in 1947 in London, just in Hendon, a little suburb outside of London. My father was in the military during World War II. He was an 8-year veteran, of the English military service. And during that period of time, when he was there, he obviously engaged quite a few Americans, in the war, and they talked so glowingly about the United States and the opportunities and all of the things that were available for families and for them in particular. And so after the war, when my father got out of the service, he and my mother decided to immigrate to the United States. This was in the early 50s. And they did. They came over on the Queen Mary, landed in New York, and was excited about being in the United States until they found out that the immigration quota was filled and they couldn't come into the United States. So and they had no money. They saved up all their money to come over, and fortunately met a great couple on the ship by the name of Lori and Francis Whitaker. And the people at the immigration office said, the immigration quota is filled. Where are you from? My dad said London. They go, oh, good. Well, you can go to Canada. You can go to London, Ontario. Says you're a British subject, so there's no immigration quota for people from the United Kingdom. So they had no money. My dad borrowed $49 from Lori and
Wow.
Francis Whitaker. Myself, my mother, and me went up the Hudson River on a barge, landed in London, Ontario, and that's where we lived for 5 years before they were able to get a sponsor to come to the United States. In those days, you had to get a sponsor. They had to vouch for your character and that you wouldn't be a burden on the taxes and everything else in the country. But they lived in California. They lived in Piedmont, California, which is a suburb of Oakland. So long story short, uh, 5 years later, we got on the train, California Zephyr, went to Piedmont, and the same people that loaned my father that money, which he paid back, as quick as he could, allowed us to stay at their home. We stayed there for almost 6 months until my father got a job. While he was in Canada, he learned to be a lithographer. He learned to trade. He was a professional boxer for a period of time and earned some money sparring and doing some of that kind of stuff. And we came to California, lived there, and my dad got a job in San Francisco and as a lithographer, and that's how it started. They had one daughter while we were in Canada, my sister, as my only other sibling, and so that's how my young life started, and was really excited to, too young to know what was going on, but it turned out really well, and a great appreciation and respect for my mom and dad, how hard that must have been leaving their entire family and coming to a new country, not knowing anybody really, and learned a lot of hard work and perseverance and things that family values that my dad and mom really showed me as a young kid on how to live and what to do. So I'm really appreciative of all their sacrifices that they made for us as kids.
Yeah, well, for us that don't know, what is a lithographer, and then how did growing up in the Saunders home influence who you became?
A printer, a lithographer is a printer.
Okay.
My dad worked at a newspaper printing plant in San Francisco, and he worked for a lithography firm, and it's a little bit of a different style of printing.
Okay.
But it's like you look at vegetable cans, the labels that go around them, and
Yeah.
and anything that you see that's printed, that's what they do, and it's making the ink and the plates and all of that. And then he did that for, oh gosh, I'm making this up now. I'm going to say 20, 25 years. And then
Wow.
he ended up being a salesman for Western Lithoplate, which supplied printing supplies to different companies throughout the country. And that's when he passed away. That's what his occupation was.
So, what was the biggest influence growing up in the Saunders home that helped you become the man you are today?
I think probably my parents, my mother and father, their values and their relationship with each other. They're like my dad would say, always tell the truth, because you never have to remember what you said, because the story's always going to be the same. He was very respectful of people. He was an extremely hard worker. I remember growing up when we were living in Oakland. He was a lithographer, and they often had strikes, like the Teamster strike and all that
Yes.
stuff in those days in the 50s and in middle 50s, late 50s, early 60s. A lot of different union groups went on strike, and my dad never batted an eye. He spent time as a security guard when they were building the Kaiser building in Oakland, which is still there. He was a custodian at the Oakland YMCA. He delivered books. He sold Reader's Digest,
Oh
as did
yeah.
my mom. And there was nothing that ever deterred them, and I never wanted to let him down with what I did, either, in growing up. And I think that the most valuable lessons I ever had was just watching my dad and how he handled himself and how he handled other people. And
Mhm.
I'm just really appreciative of that.
Al, was there a memorable conversation that sticks with you to this day that happened between you and your dad?
Yeah, there were a couple. And I think back now, in and I can't remember the year now. I'm going to say it was probably 19. I was in junior high school, so it was probably 1958, because I was a freshman in high school in 1960. I contracted polio,
Okay.
and in those days it was a debilitating disease for a lot of people. It was really a kind of a unique disease, and sometimes it was something that kids are going in iron lungs and they're dying from. Um, Continued, you know, uh, problems with your legs, the atrophy. People can't walk, and sometimes it went for like a week or two, and boom, it was gone. It was really it affected everybody differently. And I remember my legs were really sore, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't walk down the stairs in our house. And our doctor, in those days, they made home visits, right?
Yeah.
Doctor's name was Dr. John Shock. Now, what a name of a doctor, right?
I know.
And he made the home visit. He comes over and checks me out, and he tells my dad, it looks like Alan has contracted polio. And they did some things, and kind of, we got to keep an eye on it. And I was in bed; I couldn't get out of bed. And my dad, this is the first conversation I ever really remember having with him. He said, "You're not staying in bed."
Mm.
He says, "You're getting up and you're going to walk." And he put this
Mm.
honest truth. He put a $10 bill on the toilet seat in my bathroom that was just connected to my bedroom. And he said, you want that $10? You want to go to the bathroom? You get up and go yourself."
Mm.
And I remember getting out of the bed, and my legs hurt so bad I had to kind of crawl along the bed. I kind of stumbled toward the bathroom, went in there. I went there for the $10. I mean, $10 in the late '50s, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that had anything to do with, you know, overcoming that disease in a short period of time, but it always impacted me in regards to, if you're going to get something done, you got to do it. You
Mm.
can't say you can't do it. You know,
Mm.
it's about taking all of your energy and all of your focus and all of your enthusiasm to get something done that's really important to you. And obviously walking was very important. He showed me a picture of a kid in an iron lung. Says, you don't want to be in that situation. You know, you've got to get up and walk. And that motivation, however it worked out, whether it was the grace of God or whether it was, you know, my DNA or whatever it was, fortunately, I was one of those many children in the country that overcame the initial, you know, parts of polio and was able to walk. And from there, I got involved in swimming at a young age. My dad put me in the Oakland Swimming Association, and I couldn't swim, to learn how to swim, and the aqua therapy helped me progress, and that's a later part of my life. But in answering your question, the other thing I remember, the conversations that I remember most from my dad, that was one of them, and the other was, and this I had to be in the 8th grade, so I learned a lot in junior high school. My mom, we used to have these little TV trays, and my dad, being a former boxer, we used to watch Friday night fights, the Pabst Blue Ribbon Friday night fights. And I used to kind of like to watch them. My dad, of course, was totally enthused about it. And we would have these little TV trays on our couch. And we had one little TV, a little round screen. Only had like 3 stations on, and obviously it was black and white. And we're having dinner on these little TV trays, you know, the probably mashed potatoes
Yes.
and something else, you know, the 29-cent dinners from Swanson. And my mom would heat them up, bring them out, put them on our trays, and we'd eat our dinner and watch the fights. And this fight was over, or about to be over. I mean, it was one of those 10 round, I don't even know who they were. The guys were boxing like crazy. And my mom says, Alan, would you bring in your tray so I can clean up? I said, I will, Mom. I will, Mom. No, I'll do it. And waited a little while longer. She says it again. Alan, would you please bring in your tray so I can clean up? And my dad's sitting right next to me on the couch. He hadn't said a word. And all of a sudden, and I said, Mom, I'll do it. I'll do it when I'm ready. You know, typical, you know, response, you know. His hand grabbed me right by the back, and he was a strong guy. I mean, he had, you know, he's like Popeye arms, and I mean, he was a man's man, you know. And he grabbed my neck, and he said, and he turned, and so he turned it, so my face turned to him, and he says, "You never, ever talk like that to your mother again."
Mm.
He says, "You respect your mother, and you do what she tells you to do, and you respect every woman you ever meet." And I'll never forget that. And but naturally, I got up. Boy, I took my tray and his tray out. But that stayed with me for so long, and I've tried to really emphasize that to my children and to my grandchildren, the respect that you have not only for the female, but for people in general. You know,
Yeah.
and but those two things, the motivation, what you have inside of you, you can get a lot more out of you than what you think you can. And
Yeah.
sometimes
Yes.
it takes somebody to motivate you that way. But my dad, you know, was really a special man. And in fact, I was going to show you a picture of him in boxing and stuff like that. I was going to show you sometime later. And I have a few pictures of him. Oh, in fact, this. So here's a picture right off on the side of my desk. So this is my father and my grandfather and me. This was the
Oh,
only
Wow.
when we left from England. Never saw my grandparents again. We saw them one time. Saw my grandfather one time, and my grandmother one time, because in those days you didn't fly over. They had to come over in a boat. It took them a week to come
right.
over. Took them a week then to get the train from New York all the way to California, and then going back again. They could neither afforded the time or afford the money away from work. But that was when we were in Oakland. That was just that was in front of Lori and Francis Whitaker's home in Piedmont, California.
Your dad was a big man.
Well, no, we were just little.
Yeah, yeah.
He was. Dad was probably right around 6 feet, and
His shoulders look like a big man.
yeah, he was really a special man.
Yeah.
Wait,
Coach,
do you have 1 second? Can I run and get
yeah,
something to show you?
absolutely.
Yes.
Real
Yeah.
quick.
Yes. It's
Okay, I'm sprinting. I didn't mean to take up that much time, but
no, it's good.
this is just in another room. So this is my dad. Can you see that?
Oh, boxing?
Yes.
That's my dad as a boxer.
Oh, awesome. Now, Coach,
Wow.
did you ever box?
No, he boxed my ears every once in a while, but I never did. He was smart.
I don't know how boxers do it.
He was smarter than that. He never wanted me to get in the pugilist combative arts deal, and he really wasn't excited when I was playing football. He'd rather that I stayed as a swimmer for a long period of time. But yeah, it was an interesting growing up, and probably the one person other than all of the coaches that I've had, and there are several that have made such a dramatic impact and influence on my life. And one of the reasons I really wanted to get into coaching at a young age, for how they made me feel and how much confidence and belief they had, and how you could see young kids or even adults transform under the
Yes.
guidance and the direction of people in coaching. And I've been fortunate to be coached by and coached with some of those great people that have made a tremendous influence on my life and the people's lives that they've touched.
Before we get to high school, Austin, real quick, as we do this podcast each week over the last year, it just keeps reinforcing to me the importance or how a home affects each person. Our parents, our siblings, every story has had something different about how the home has affected their life. And that's why we always go back and start there. I think that gives us the best picture, of a person when you get a look at their home. So thank you so much for sharing so much about your early years. It sounds like you had some great parents and what a great life.
It just goes to show you what a responsibility being a parent is.
Oh, no
Yes.
doubt.
You take a young child that's born and it's a blank page, and the influence that you have on your children and what you say and what you do is oftentimes actually what you do and how you feel and how you are as a human being probably has more of an impact than what you say, and I'm appreciative for having great parents who overcame a lot and never had any money, but worked hard and very honorable people, very, very Christian people, and really gave me some positive direction in my life.
That's awesome. So, Coach, tell us a little bit about your high school career, where you went, maybe what sports you did, and just if there's any memorable stories from your high school career.
Yeah, I grew up in Oakland, California, and then I actually went to high school in San Francisco.
Okay.
What I was a swimmer, a competitive swimmer at a young age, and part of it was the rehabilitation from the polio episode, being along in the Oakland Swimming Association. Never forget that. It was a guy by the name of Gordy Weston was the instructor and the coach, and it was a competitive swimming team as well as an instructional program of how to swim. And
Yeah.
I kind of went through I remember we'd go to Oakland High School. That's where the swimming lessons were. And it was all year. It was in the evening. And my dad had enrolled me in this for therapeutic reasons. And so I learned how to swim. I enjoyed it. We had little inter squad meets, 25-meter freestyle or something like that. And then, I got a little better and better and better and ended up joining a competitive team in the area that was really, really a high-level team, the Oakland YMCA at the time, under a gentleman by the name of Gus McKinnon, who ended up being the University of California swimming coach over there as an assistant. Was one of the greatest coaches in swimming. As a stroke technician was just phenomenal. It would be like being a great pitching coach or a great shooting coach in basketball. But joined the Oakland YMCA, and we won the national championship a couple of times. Ended up developing as a swimmer and ended up winning the Junior Olympics a couple of times. And
Wow.
Was an prep All-American high school swimmer. And I went to St. Ignatius because they had the best high school swimming program, in the Bay Area. As it turned out, when I went there my freshman year, they made a rule that anybody that lives outside of the city itself could not compete in any other sport, in any sports, because they felt like there were two Catholic high schools in San Francisco, St. Ignatius and Sacred Heart. And they felt like those two Catholic schools recruited, and all the other schools, Balboa, Washington, Lowell High School, they were all public schools, but we were in the same conference. There were 10 teams. O.J. Simpson was going to Balboa High School at the time. Shows you how guys missed it. He was an offensive guard in high school.
Wow.
An offensive guard. And then then he goes to San Francisco Junior College and does what he does. But anyway, long story short, I couldn't compete in any other sport. And at the time, I really, I was so focused on swimming because we were swimming at a high level and having a great deal of success with it. So it was okay to swim AAU competition or YMCA competition all year round and not do the high school thing. I could swim in practice meets, but I couldn't swim in the league meets. So that prevented me from playing baseball and basketball and football and sports that, you would really enjoy playing and that I wanted to play, but I couldn't. And my dad would not. He worked in San Francisco. We'd drive over Oakland, leave about 6 o'clock in the morning, drive over, and the only 50-meter pool in the area was at Treasure Island. And we had to go through Treasure Island to get to San Francisco. So we'd pull over there in the morning and we'd work out, especially in the summer when I didn't have school. But that was the only 50-meter facility and to train in. But on school days, drive over, swim. My dad would wait for me. About 7:30, I'd be he'd let me off at Market and Eddy Street. I'd take the bus up to school. First one at school all the time, do my homework down there, and then come back and we'd have a night workout at the Y, the Oakland Y or Berkeley Y or wherever we were swimming at the time. So that was my high school. My dad wanted me to have a Catholic education. He wanted me to enjoy the academics of St. Ignatius, and him working in San Francisco, and all of the people that worked with him were from San Francisco. So the reputation of St. Ignatius High School became something that was, he was hearing every day, and all of a sudden, boy, it's really good. Your son's going there, and it worked out great. And that was my high school athletic career. And then my senior year, I wanted to play football, and Vince Tringali was the football coach at St. Ignatius. Just an unbelievable guy. SI we'd only lost 2 games in 4 years that I was there. They won the mythical national championship in 1964. Vince is the coach, and I wanted to play football. I played in intramurals all the time, but I couldn't be on the team. And so I went to Coach Tringali my senior year and says, Coach, I want to play college football. And he looked at me and said, "You want to play college football?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I think I can do it." And he goes, "Okay." He says, "I've watched you in those intramural games." He says, "You can catch the ball and run faster than most all the guys on our team." He says, I'll see what I can do to help you." So he gave me in those days, it was isometric contractions. There was no
Yes.
lifting. So he had this isometric contraction workout. And we had some guys, Ray Calcagno, great quarterback, played at Santa Clara, was an All-American there for years. John Deschler and Bob Unruh went to USC off that team. There was probably 6 or 7 guys that went and played Division I football. And so I thought, well, okay, I probably can't play at Cal or Stanford, plus, this costs too much to go there. But I wrote a letter to all of the Bay Area schools, to the head coaches. I wrote to Cal, Stanford, UOP, San Jose State, and I think Fresno State and San Diego State too. But long story short, I get nobody responded to me other than San Jose State. And the freshman coach there was a guy by the name of John Webb, just a fabulous guy. I did the eulogy at his funeral, by the way, just a while back. But I got a letter back saying, yes, we would love to have, if you're interested in San Jose State, we'd enjoy talking to you about the possibility of joining our athletic program. So long story short, I tell Coach Tringali, he calls up John Webb, the freshman coach there. In those days, we had freshman teams and the varsity teams. And he says, I got this kid that wants to come and play football. He says, I've watched, and I don't know if Coach Tringali ever saw San Jose State play. He says, I've watched several of your games, and I want you to know that this kid is faster. He can catch the ball better, and he's a better football player than a lot of players we have on this high school team. He says, I guarantee you he'll be able to play at San Jose State. Well, so I get a call from Coach Webb, and we go down there in the spring. He invites me down to a spring game. Well, 5 other guys from SI went down there, and Coach Tringali kind of put me in with that group and sent down these 6 players from St. Ignatius High School that were considering going to San Jose State. So long story short, went there. Only cost $300 a semester to go to school there. There were only 8,000 students. So I applied. Couldn't have afforded to go to any other place because I had to pay for it. And my dad this was a real difficult time for him because I had several scholarship opportunities as a swimmer, and that would have taken care of, the education but I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to play football and see how I could do. And he said, once again, another conversation, he was very, very supportive and said, I really think you should continue your swimming career. You have an opportunity to get scholarships at these universities, but now you're going to go and try to play football. You've never played football before. I said, Dad, I can catch and run. I know I can do this, So he supported me, and okay, fine. But I worked in the summer to make the $300 so I could pay the tuition. But anyway, long story short, I go there, and our freshman quarterback was a guy by the name of Bob Toledo. Okay, Bob
Yes.
ended up being the head coach at UCLA.
I know Bob.
And I have a great deal of appreciation and respect for Bob because he really helped me. He was a quarterback, and I was a receiver. I was probably 7th or 8th in the depth chart. We had a big freshman team that year, and a couple of guys got hurt, so I moved up a little bit. And then we had a game scheduled against the University of Pacific. Pete Carroll would have been on that team. I would have been playing against him and a couple other guys that went there. But the game got canceled for some reason. They had some issue with their bus or something. I can't remember what it was. So, but we're there at the stadium. We've all got our uniforms on and all this stuff. We're ready to have a game with UOP. And then all of a sudden the coach comes in, there is no game. So we're going to have a scrimmage. So he divided the team up. So half of us changed our jerseys to have the dark jerseys, so we had a scrimmage. And so now all of a sudden, instead of being 7th on the depth chart, I was like 2nd on one of the teams. So, and a guy gets hurt, the guy that was playing in front of me. So I go in there, and I'm a wide receiver. And I caught, I think, like 6 balls, and I caught a touchdown or something, and Toledo was our quarterback. And so all of a sudden I kind of was I had an opportunity, to show what I could do. And so then the next game, our first real game, was against San Quentin Prison. That's obviously an away game at San Quentin. But we go there, and I once again, I had an opportunity to get in. I caught a couple balls, and Bobby threw him, I could not drop him. I mean, they're right in my chest. He was a phenomenal quarterback, really. And then the next game, our first real game was against Stanford. And one of the receivers got hurt during the week. So I ended up starting the Stanford game against Stanford University at Stanford before our Stanford San Jose varsity game. And I think I caught one or two balls. It wasn't spectacular in that game. But I ended up being starting wide receiver. And
Wow.
so did that my freshman year. And then redshirted the next year. And finally had a talk with Harry Anderson, was our head football coach, just a phenomenal man too, who made a great impact on my life. I remember him putting his arm around me and says, "Al," he goes, "you really worked hard, really, and I think you have a real, opportunity to continue as a receiver. But we got another couple of guys, a guy by the name of S.T. Saffold, who was a great player, Steve Cox, who was a great receiver. He said, I think you might be able to help us on defense." I said, "Defense?" So after my redshirt year, I was moved to defense.
Yeah.
And once again, a couple of guys get hurt. A guy by the name of Don Peterson, who still remains one of my closest friends, Terry Hostick, a couple of Neil Powers, guys that I played with. They kind of helped me along. I was working as a safety, and then I had pretty good ball skills, and I could run okay. Moved to corner, and so I started my sophomore year as a corner, and played there for the rest of my career. Was an academic All-American my junior year, and just really grateful for the people that motivated me, that worked with me, that coached me, teammates and coaches that really helped me mature and go on into a sport that I love so much, and ended up coaching for 50 years.
Al, what were some of the going back to swimming, which I didn't know you were a swimmer, but going back to your swimming career, what were some of the qualities as a swimmer that you were able to help you become a better football player? Were there some similarities?
Yeah, it was really different in that it's an individual sport. It's like track or like golf. I mean, it's about you, and it's about your performance, and it's about the thing that I came to realize is that there was so little difference in being okay or being really good or being a world champion. And the only way you get there is through hard work. I mean, you have to work hard. I mean, we'd swim, and guys would be breaking national records in practice in swimming, and that's the kind of competition that I was swimming with. The guys like Don Scholander and Mark Spitz in swim meets.
Wow.
And there, you'd swim the shorter the distance, the closer it's like running the 100 meters versus running a mile. You'd swim 50 meters or 100-meter freestyle, and it would be boom, 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 boom. That's 1 through 6. So the slightest irregularity in your stroke mechanics or techniques, your slightest loss of focus would be deleterious to your overall performance. And the other thing was the effort that you had to put in every single day. In those days, we didn't have weight programs and all that stuff, so everything was in the pool. Now, they spend 3 hours a day out of the pool. But we'd be swimming, and if you do, I'm just making this up now, do 10 100-yard repeats, for example, with a 30-second rest in between. Those 100-yard repeats, they weren't just, so they were as fast as you could go. I mean, as fast as you could go. And one of the things that helped me in football was, and I'll never forget this, I was the 7th receiver on one side. There were 7 on the other side, flankers. And I said I wanted to be a flanker because I kind of knew that term, Okay, so that's when I signed up for what I wanted to do, I said, I want to be a flanker. But anyway, so there'd be a line of 7 guys, and I'd always be first in line because I liked running. I thought that's what you did, as hard as you could go. And every route I ran as hard as I could go. And when I caught the ball, I always would run 10, 15, 20 yards down the field as hard as I could run. And then I'd run back to the huddle, or I'd run back to the line. And some guys, they didn't want to go, after 3 or 4 reps. I'm not going to do this anymore. So I just jump up. I jump up in front of everybody, thinking that that's what you did. You went as hard as you could go, every single opportunity. And I think that the coaches kind of like that. They like guys with effort and stuff. Well, I didn't know that.
That's for sure.
That's what everybody did, but they didn't. And so that helped me. That swimming background, being able to focus, being able to prepare, really helped me in anything all along in my playing career and my coaching career, is trying to impart that on the players that I coach, the importance of effort, the importance of not letting down anybody else. And the only teamwork environment you had in swimming was on relays. And I was fortunate to be on a relay when I was 13 years old, that we broke the national record. And then later on, I swam for a senior men's, our relay team. We had a couple of guys that went to Indiana that were world-class swimmers, and was fortunate to be on that relay team. And, it's like going back to my dad. I didn't want to let him down. And that feeling was so much a part of me as a player in football. I didn't want to let Bobby Toledo down. If he was going to stand back there and throw that football, I was going to catch that son of a gun no matter what. And if I was playing defense, I was hopefully not going to let anybody run by me. Although I remember in my that sophomore, maybe it was the junior year. I can't even remember his name now. That first round draft choice in the NFL. Anyway, went by me for 2 touchdowns on a nationally televised game, and I thought, oh my God, this is not really good. I'll think of his name in a second. But it was that helped me through swimming.
That's good.
To my playing in football, and also my coaching years later.
Before we get to the 50-year coaching career, Austin, I do want to ask you, Al, because I think it's important in the future of our conversation of what you're going to talk about. But you mentioned you were an academic All-American. You got a master's at Stanford, I think. You started your doctoral studies and came quite close to finishing that. Have you always had a passion for learning?
Not really. I just thought that's what you were supposed to do. My dad always said there's 2 really important things in your life if you want to be successful. Doesn't guarantee it, but it will help you. So one is health, and the other is education. So you do everything you can to be as healthy as you can, how you eat, how you sleep, how you exercise, and you do everything you can to get as much knowledge and education as you can. He was a high school graduate. My mother was a high school graduate. In England, they never went to college. I was the first college graduate in our family, only college graduate in our family, only one that went to college in our family. But he really thought those things were important. And it kind of goes back to the swimming background, is when you had an assignment, you did it. I didn't accelerate in my academic programs because I wanted to be an educator. It ended up being that way. I didn't have a thirst for knowledge. I just did it because that's what you were supposed to do. You went to algebra, and this was your homework. So the whole thing was, that's my homework. I'll do it as well as I can do it. I got a paper to do in English. I got to read this book and write a report on it. I'm going to do it as well as I can. The competitive part of my growing up, and it still remains to me to this day, is I don't want to be second. And my wife would say, "Hey, relax. You don't need to win this." Well, I do. That was instilled at me at a young age, from going to get that $10 bill off the toilet to my swimming career. When we had repeats of hundreds or 200s or so many IM or backstroke or breaststroke, I didn't want to be second in that pool. Now I was second, third, fourth, and fifth, and sixth, a whole bunch, but I didn't want to be there. I wanted to do what it took to be first and to win. And I think that's a positive thing about athletics. It can be a negative thing too, because you could really, you know, your life could go maybe in a different way. But that's just really important to me. And academically, it was, and I didn't see it as a contest, but I saw it as an assignment, a requirement, and then I didn't want to do anything less than my best, in that whatever it was, and so that's why I had once again some great teachers and there was a fellow by the name of Dr. Robert Bronson at San Jose State who I just adored and wanted to emulate in my life. He was the athletic director, who was the head football coach, Dick Vermeil and Bill Walsh, were coached by him also. And he was a great mentor to all of us, to all three of us that went to San Jose there. We had a great athletic program because several of our coaches there were Olympic coaches. We had Don Carlos and Tommy Smith, 68 Olympics on the victory stand, with the Black Power salute, just tremendously courageous guys and phenomenal athletes. And they both came out from football after the 68 Olympics, and Tommy ended up playing for Cincinnati for a while, but Lee Evans and that Bud Winter was the track coach, and he taught classes at San Jose. And our boxing coach and our Hugh Mumby, Hugh Mumby was the wrestling coach. He was an Olympic coach. Julie Menendez was the boxing coach. He coached in the Olympics. He was the Olympic boxing coach with Muhammad Ali in that Olympics.
Wow.
60 Olympics. Jerry Vroom was the golf coach, and he was a PGA professional. And we had San Jose State was a place you went to go to learn to coach, to be an educator, a high school teacher, which I thought I would end up being, and a coach. And Bob Bronson was the athletic director. And he taught a class. Every single freshman in that school that was a freshman athlete had to take his class. Doesn't matter whether you major in English, science, history, public speaking, physical education. You had to take his class as a freshman. It was the earliest class that started at school that day. It was 7:30 in the morning. I'll never forget it. So as a freshman, we're all, you go sign up for his class. It starts at 7:30, right? So fortunately, that day we had my roommate and I had breakfast, and we both playing on the freshman football team. Walked over from the dorm. We get there about 5 or 6 minutes early. Sit down in the chairs, and so Dr. Bronson comes in. He's got a coat and tie on. Always wore a coat and tie, and he was about 6'3", about 230. I mean, lifted. He looked the part. I mean, he could have been, gray hair, silver hair. Like he could have been. He walked in a room as a senator, and you would have voted for whatever he wanted. And just really an articulate guy. Had a PhD from Stanford. I mean, that was his deal. He walked in that class. I'll never forget it. And there was a little window in the door with a little shade on it. So he goes in, he closes the door, and it's about 7:29. He goes, he pulls the shade down and locks the door. And now there's maybe 25 guys, 20 in the class. It was probably going to be a class of 30 or so. And all of a sudden you hear this boom, knocking on the door. And my roommate was right next to me, right in the 2 seats thing. And he gets up and Dr. Bronson says, "Sit down," in that tone, "Sit down." And so Bob Carter was my roommate. Bob goes, he sits back down in the seat. I'm sitting next to him. And, oh my God, what have we got ourselves into? First day of school, first day of classes, first class. This is the athletic director. We are in trouble. This guy is something. He gets up on the board and he writes punctuality and underlines it. And so everybody that was not in the class, he would not let in the class. They had to take it the next semester. So he said, "This is our class." He says, "Today we're going to talk about punctuality." And he gave a whole lecture on how important it was, how, if you're not punctual, you're wasting the time of other people. The greatest quality we have in life is the time we have to spend on earth and the time we have to spend with other people. He says, if you are late, then you are violating that privilege you have in relationship with people, and you're wasting.
Wow.
He says, you won't waste my time and I won't waste your time. I prepared for this lecture. Now that was paraphrasing a little bit, but essentially that's what it was. So it was a 45-minute class. We had a 45-minute talk on punctuality. Every class had one specific topic, and he discussed it thoroughly. I remember one was balancing checkbooks, one was proper nutrition, one was sleeping habits and all that kind of stuff. And then the one I remember the most, because I did the eulogy at his funeral also, was he walked in. He always wore a coat and tie, right? And so we're traveling our first away game to San Quentin, right? So we're going to travel in our coat and a little thin tie, and our San Jose State blazer. That was the full, because we freshman team and the varsity team all travel. We had these little blazers, pretty cool actually. So he comes in class. He goes, and he takes off his tie, and we're just all sitting there. What's this class going to be about? And he says, "Men," he says, "you have your first away game." He says, "Those of you on the football team will be traveling, and you'll be wearing a coat and tie." He says, "Go buy a tie. If you don't have a tie, I'll have one for you. Come by my office later this afternoon." And he says, "Nobody has those clip-on ties." He says, no bow ties. I want you to tie a tie. So he says, your assignment is to learn how to tie a tie. He said, and this was it was a Tuesday and Thursday class. So he says, next Thursday, I want you to bring a tie to class. And that was at the end of whatever class we were having that day. So once again, long story short, the next week is Tuesday. We come in, we all have these ties, And so he proceeds to show us how to, put the tie on, tie the tie. He had all these little mirrors around the class. So we're all looking in there. They're like this. So he says, okay. So everybody, he says, Thursday, we're having a test. You have a grade, 2 grades. You have 3 minutes to tie the tie. He says one will be a grade on your efficiency, and the other will be a grade on the aesthetics of the tie. So, so how it looks, you'll be graded on. And if you do it within 3 minutes, then you're okay. So that Wednesday after class, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, we're all practicing tying ties all the time. And so we had the test, we did it, everybody did it. And he says, every time you look in a mirror and every time you tie your tie, you will think of Dr. Robert T. Bronson. And that was the end of the class. And God is my witness. To this day, when I go and I tie a tie on, the first thing I think about is Dr. Bronson. He was phenomenal. And it's people like that give you, value, lifetime experiences that you're so grateful for. Just a little thing like tying a tie. And I told that story at his eulogy when he passed away. And certainly there, Bill Walsh was there and Dick was there and, other coaches and other people who he touched during his life, a lot of students. And it was just packed. And virtually almost every guy that had played football or been in they all, you could see their heads shaking. Oh yeah, Dr. Bronson. But every time I tie a tie, I think about him, and I'm grateful that I do, because he was the reason that I actually went to Stanford. I wasn't going to do that, and he said, "Yes, you will." And he called the Department of Education at Stanford, knew personally the dean of the Department of Education at that time, and I had high enough grades. I was accepted to the doctoral program, but I think the master's program, and I was also accepted to the doctoral program there, and I didn't do it. But it was him, So once again, a coach in my life, people that have impacted me and made available the opportunities that I've had, and I think my father and my mother and my sewing background and my younger training, helped me take advantage of the opportunities that I was presented.
Awesome. So, Coach, let's jump into your coaching career. Tell us what made you decide to coach, and then how did you get your start?
Well, that's another long story. This could be a 6-hour podcast. But truly, and I was thinking about this the last couple of days. I always wanted to teach.
Yeah.
And this goes back, once again, another Mr. Anderson. Um, when I was in junior high school, I went to McChesney Junior High School in Oakland. And uh, we'd show up at school. Let's say school started at 8. I'm not sure what time it started, but I'm going to say it just for conversation purposes.
Yeah.
It started 8 o'clock. An hour before school started, Mr. Anderson, and he was always dressed in a gray, like he had gray long pants on and this gray like work shirt, and he had a gray hat. And at 7 o'clock during football season, if it was football season, he'd check out footballs so you could play early, before school. And then during basketball season, he'd check out basketballs. We didn't have an indoor gym, so everything was out on the black hardtop. And then in baseball season, he'd check out bats and balls. So if he got there at 7 o'clock in the morning, you could play football, baseball, basketball with the guys, the guys that just wanted to do that. So it kind of pick up games and stuff. And then he also coached the junior high teams that we had. So, if you're playing basketball, if you're playing, some of the team games, he did that too. And I thought, what a great job Mr. Anderson has. I mean, every day he comes to play his games. He plays, and he used to play with us. He played football with us. He played basketball with us. And I'm thinking he was probably maybe in his mid-30s at the time. He was probably, to me, he seemed like an old guy, but he was probably a younger guy. But I thought, what a great thing. And then the swimming, when I was with the Oakland Swimming Association, Gordon Weston, who I brought his name up before, the older kids taught the younger kids. So the real competitive swimmers, the Tim Powers, who ended up being the coach at BYU for 38 years and was a 3-time Olympic coach, who was one of my teammates, Fred Bischoff, who was an All-American swimmer, Eddie Duncan, who was an All-American at Cal, an Olympian, Terry Cole. Those are names that I just come back into my brain right now, that I swam with every day. And those guys were much more advanced than I was because I was there for therapeutic reasons. But those guys taught the kids that couldn't swim. And I was one of those kids that couldn't swim and had to learn. And I'd watch them swim in meets and stuff like that. Oh my God, these guys are phenomenal. I want to be like those guys. So they taught. And then when I got older, part of the deal was we went and swam for an hour or something, and then we'd have to devote an hour to teach the kids at a younger level. That was part of the way I grew up. And every summer, I was a swim instructor, lifeguard, aquatic director at Brentwood Country Club, Pigmont Swim Club, just that's what I did. So I just always wanted to teach. I always thought I wanted to, and I didn't know what it was then. I didn't know it was coaching, but I wanted to teach athletics because I loved athletics. I loved the opportunity. I loved being taught. I loved to know that I could teach someone else and maybe they'd be better at a skill. And we're real appreciative of that. And that's how I went to San Jose, played football, was impressed so much in my life by Dr. Bronson, by John Webb, who was my freshman coach and then was the secondary coach all through my varsity career. And Harry Anderson, who was our head coach. And once again, I was involved in all three of their memorial services and just made an impact on me for life. And that's when I graduated from San Jose State. I applied to Stanford, and once again, Dr. Bronson got me involved there, was in the education department, and was assigned as a student teacher to Gunn High School in Palo Alto. And was asked, the principal said, "You play college football, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Would you mind coaching the sophomore team?" It was a brand new high school. They didn't have a coach. And I thought, okay, well, if I don't have to teach one of these classes in the classroom, I'll do it. And then, once again, long story short, I coached the sophomore football team and the sophomore basketball team. So I didn't have to do one of the in-class assignments that I had.
Using your leverage there.
Football, won the league, and only lost 2 games in basketball. And I thought, well, I really know what I'm not going to be a pretty good coach, but it was just such, and I still hear from those kids. We have the reunions in Northern California. I still get letters and phone calls from them and how they're doing. Tom Lynn was was a great player. He went on to Stanford. He was on our sophomore football team and did a great job. And his dad was a coach there. And then after that, I decided that I would like to coach, but I don't want to teach in the classroom. I just want to coach. So how do you do that? So once again, I go back to the people who I respected and were kind of directors in my career and my life. And so, Dr. Bronson, I would really like to coach college football. Or no, I didn't say that because I didn't know. I said, I really like to coach, but I don't want to teach in the classroom. So how do I do that? And his response was, well, you need to probably go to a Division I school, be a graduate assistant, and then, either go to junior college or go to a college program. Maybe, you'll meet enough people that they'll help you get placed. And in those days, it was a little bit more, it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know and who you're working for and the programs you're in to kind of help you get where you're going. So I said, well, how do I do that? And he says, well, you got to go to school. So you got to go to graduate school. So now you're ready for a PhD program. So apply to some schools to be in the PhD program and then write to the head coach and ask if, they have an availability to be a graduate assistant because you're going to be going to school there. So once again, this is another long story, but I wrote to the top 10 teams in the country, to the head coach to inquire if they had any availabilities for graduate assistants. And I wrote to 10. I got 3 responses back. I got one from Penn State, I got one from Alabama, and I got one from the University of Southern California, all from the secretary with a stamp for the coach. So as time went on, I'm back at school at San Jose State. I'm walking on campus, and I go by to say hello to Dr. Bronson. He says, "Hey, Al." So by the way, he says, "How's your your quest for the graduate assistantships going?" I says, "Well, Dr. Bronson," I said, "I wrote 10 letters to head coaches. I got 3 responses. All of them were from the secretary with a stamp deal, and they said that there's no positions available. They reserve them for their student athletes." So he says, "Well, who'd you get responses from?" And I said, "Joe Paterno, Coach Bryant, and John McKay." He says, "Oh, you wrote to SC?" And I said, "Yeah." But that year they were I think they just won the national championship 2 years before. And they were in the top 10, as they usually were. So he said, what did they say? And I said, "Well, there's no availability." And I said, "It wasn't a handwritten deal. It was, you could tell it was a stamp thing. Probably a lot of people." He says, "Why don't you come back and see me in a couple of days?" I said, "Okay." So I go back in his office in a couple of days. He goes, "What are you doing this week?" And I said, "Well, just tying up some stuff at school. I'm graduating in June and I'm just doing some work." He says, "Do you have time to go to Los Angeles?" I said, "For what?" He says, to talk to John McKay. And I said, "To talk to John McKay?" He said, "Yeah, I just called him last night." He says, "He'd like to see you and talk to you about the possibility of a graduate assistantship there." I said, and I hadn't applied yet. He says, "I told him that you were accepted to the doctoral program and you'll be going to school there next year as a PhD candidate. And does he have room to have you work as a graduate assistant?" So, I get a plane, I could fly down to LA. Meanwhile, I'm applying to the PhD program, the other stuff. And I got accepted. But the interview went well, and there was a fellow by the name of Hudson Houck who had played there on John's national championship team as a center. He was a line coach in the league for years and years and years. He retired about the same year that I did. And he was in my wedding. We still keep in contact with each other. But that's how it started. That's how I went to USC, was there for 2 years. Never got paid a penny. So thank God I was accepted to the doctor program and got a state graduate fellowship, because that paid for my tuition, and it paid for some money. And I worked as a waiter at night, at the Seven Sails and the Fiasco restaurant down in the Marina Del Rey to make money. But the good thing about that was met my wife there. She was a student at SC at the time, but spent 2 years there. And I think I've said this story to a million people. Coach McKay always used to smoke a cigar. He never light it, but he'd be in the office, And called Hudson and I after 2 years, and we had great. We had Pat Hayden and J.K. McKay and a bunch of really, really great players there. they won the national championship in '73, the year after Hudson and I left, but Coach McKay calls us into his office. He goes, well, boys, he goes, do you know what the National Coaches Football Convention is all about? Of course, I always had the answer, right? I said, yeah, go in there and listen to lectures and learn football. And he goes, no, the National Convention is to go and get a job. He says, you'll meet a lot of people, but you need to get a job, because when you come back, you guys don't have one. Our hearts sunk. We were 2 years, graduate assistant. I think we lost one game in 2 years. We lost to UCLA when they had the Blair pair. They had a really great freshman team. But so he gives us a plane ticket to go. Gives us $100. It was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was we go there, the Fontainebleau Hotel, and Hudson.
Oh yeah.
We got resumes, and we got thick resumes. We said, Hudson, let's make sure we get our own rooms, because people are going to call us, and we want to make sure that we get. 2 days we didn't hear from them. We're sticking resumes in mailboxes under doors. We're seeing guys in the lobby giving them, nothing. We come back. About a few days later, Coach McKay calls us in his office again. Well, boys, how'd you do down there? Gee, Coach, we tried like heck. We tried to make as many contacts as we could, handed out all those resumes. Excuse me. Nobody responded. He goes, Al, he slides a piece of paper, has Al Onofrio on it, University of Missouri. He said, give Coach Onofrio a call. He goes, Hudson, hands Hudson a piece of paper, has Jack Christensen on it, Stanford University. He says, Hudson, give Coach Christensen a call. So, and you never talked. You never asked Coach McKay questions, right? He was done with you when he was done with you, and little time as possible, little conversation as possible. I got some stories about him. He was a phenomenal teacher. So we go out the office. I asked the secretary, can I make a call? I've got to call the University of Missouri. Coach McKay has asked me to call Coach Onofrio. Oh yeah, no problem. Hudson and I didn't have an office. They wouldn't let us have an office. We couldn't even shower in the locker room with the coaches. And Joe Gibbs was on that staff. Wayne Fonts was on that staff. Willie Brown was on that staff. It was a phenomenal coaching staff. So this is a true story. To make the call, Coach, to the number that was there. It was always the push button phones, right? So,
Yes.
The secretary answers, hello. I said, hi, this is Al Saunders from the University of Southern California. I'm a graduate assistant. And Coach John McKay had asked me to call Coach Al Onofrio. Oh, hold on. He's expecting your call. I'm nervous now. This is the head coach. This is Al Onofrio, University of Missouri, just a phenomenal coach. And so Coach Onofrio, the best guy in the world, he gets on the phone. He goes, hello. I says, Coach Onofrio, this is Al Saunders. Oh, wow. He says, I've been expecting you to call. He says, I'm so sorry that I didn't get together with you down at the convention. He said, I had to get home early and I didn't have a chance. I meant to get together with you and Coach McKay down there, but I didn't have the chance. He says, are you going to take the job? And as God is my witness, I'm thinking, job? What job? What am I doing? I said, and so my first thought was, absolutely. I had no idea what I was going to coach. I had no idea. I didn't even know where the University of Missouri was. Columbia, Missouri. I'd never been there. I'd never been across the states like that. I didn't know where it was. So I said, he says, well, when can you be out here? I says, well, when would you like me? I said, well, we got a couple of weeks. We're doing some work. He says, but get yourself organized there. And he says, come out in a couple of weeks and, we'll get started. Great. Hang up. I had no idea what I was coaching. I had no idea where I was going. I had and he said, call, just talk to Diane. She'll get you set up with with your trip and everything like that. So, okay. So I'm the receivers coach at University of Missouri. They run the wishbone. I got one guy to coach. One guy out there, we had and that year we went to the Fiesta Bowl, and had a great year. And it was just a great experience. And it just, John McKay, just like Dr. Bronson was just an integral part of me being able to have an opportunity. And then from there, the defensive coordinator at USC got the head job at Utah State University. Phil Kruger was his name. And so Phil calls and asks if I'd be interested in coming to Utah State. And here I was out in Missouri, and Karen and I were just about engaged at that time. It was a real serious relationship, and she was just finishing up school at SC. So I thought, maybe the West Coast would be good, and so I got to be the play caller. I coached the running backs at Utah State, coached a guy by the name of Louis Giamona, who was Dick Vermeil's nephew. And Louis
Wow.
led the nation in rushing in 73 and 74, and in all-purpose running. It was, he played for Philadelphia. Little guy, 5'8", about 200 pounds, phenomenal player. Just really a great. We still stay in contact, and he was just a great player. And from there, ended up getting a job at the University of California at Berkeley with Mike White, and that's and then after I left Cal, had an opportunity to go with Johnny Majors, who, Ken, you coached for, and know what a dynamic person he was and what an impact he can have in someone's development as a coach. But those people were so important to me and really taught me different facets of the coaching profession. And if you want me to tell you a couple of stories about dealing with those guys, I'll tell you a couple of John McKay stories. And John was very short on words. And this is an absolute true story. So the first day of 2-a-day training camp, we're out there on the practice field, and I'm helping with the wide receivers, and got a guy by the name of Lynn Swan, who was a pretty good receiver. And
pretty well-known name.
A couple other guys that ended up being pro players and in the Pro Bowl for a long time, and so, and at SC, it was all about offense, right? I mean, the defense, we were just a better football team than anybody in America because of the guys that were recruited there, the players that we had. I mean, they were just phenomenal players. But the offense would go in two groups. They'd have one group would go and run a play, next group would go and run a play. That same group would run a play, then they'd run a play and run a play and run a play. And the defense would just be they'd be like the look squad, but they really weren't, So they played every snap against the offense, but the offense was going and the pace was so fast. It's just the tempo was so fast. So a group would get up and say Lynn Swan, say Lynn was this receiver. He'd run a route, catch the ball, come back, And then by the time that group was coming back, the next group was going to the line of scrimmage, and they were running a play. So like one of the receivers come back. So I talked to him, hey, good job on the route, try to get your head around a little bit quicker next time, or take a different angle to do that block while the other team was running the play. So, and I thought I did a heck of a job. I thought I was really coaching and doing well. So we're walking off the field, and it was the first day of practice, and Coach McKay is walking with Joe Gibbs and one of the other coaches, and they're kind of walking, the three of them, and I'm kind of walking behind them, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I could just kind of catch up and just kind of maybe Coach McKay could kind of see me out of the corner of his eye and tell me I did an okay job, looking for that, confirmation that you were okay. So I catch up to him, and Coach McKay kind of looks over and he goes, Al, he goes, glad you're here. He says, but we don't work half days here. We work full days. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So I kind of drifted back, and the other three, they went into the locker room. So, and once again, Hudson and I, we couldn't shower with the coaches. We had our own little physical education locker room with little showers that didn't work. The floor was cold, So I'm waiting for Phil Kruger, who I got to really know well and was really helpful to me. So I thought, maybe and since he was walking with Joe and Coach McKay, I don't know what he meant by working half days, So I said, Coach Kruger, I said, do you remember when we were walking off the field and Coach McKay said, we work full days, we don't work half days here? I said, what did he mean? Did I screw up or something? He says, yeah, you screwed up big time. He says, we coach on the run. And he says, we coach every player, not just half the team when they come back or one player. He says, you probably did some really good things and really did some good explanations, some good teaching. He says, but you just worked half day. You worked with half the group. So I said, well, what do I do? He says, Coach McKay demands one thing, immediate feedback. And in those days, we had film. We didn't have video.
Yes.
So we had to wait to the next day to see a practice film. So he says, Coach McKay wants immediate feedback. If a guy does something right, you tell him he did it well. And if he does it wrong, don't just tell him, hey, catch the ball or get your head around. He says, you explain to him what he did wrong. So the next time he runs a route, he'll know what to do. Okay. So that afternoon practice, because we were in 2 days, that afternoon practice, the first group would go up and a receiver would run a route and I would run right behind him. As soon as the ball was snapped, I ran because I knew what route he was going to run, so I didn't crash into him. So if he's running an out route, I'd run down the field and then I'd be maybe 15 yards behind him, but I'd run. And when he would either catch the ball or come out of the break, I would go right to him and say, God dang it, Lynn, get your head around quicker. You're never going to get it. If that ball comes out. If Pat throws that ball to you right now, you're not going to catch the damn thing. Get your head around. And then I'd sprint back to the huddle and get, and because Willie Brown was taking the other side, then I'd take this side. So I'd sprint back to the huddle. The next guy was ready. I'd run the route with him. Now, once again, going back to the swimming, I had great cardiovascular. I could run all day, and later on in life, I ended up running marathons and all that kind of stuff. But that never bothered. So I would run down the field, come back. Once again, God's honest truth. We're walking off the field. Coach McKay's up there again. So I'm sweating like a pig. It's small all over the place, about 105 degrees down there at SC, downtown LA. And I catch up with Coach McKay and he looks back and he goes, nice job, Al. You worked a full day today. Yeah. So
You gotta love it.
That was unbelievable. And then
Al, that's the real quick. That's the trademark. If someone were to say, Coach, how would you remember Coach Saunders on the field? To this day, last week, I was telling this little high school receiver coach that I'm working with, and I said, I was using you as an example about running down the field. That was the first time in 1990 I ever saw a coach do that. And I said, that's incredible as a teacher.
Well, and when you think about it, it's so logical because, a guy runs a comeback, say an 18-yard comeback route. And by the time, and you know how receivers are, Kenny. I mean, you played quarterback for a lot of years and where it was really a good one. And if you didn't throw a ball to a guy, or even if you did and he didn't finish, I mean, they don't run back to the huddle. I mean, they're walking back, right? So by the time they walk back at SC, that other group was going. Well, most of the time it's only one group, so you could probably get away with that a little bit. But I used to think there's nothing better than immediately tell that kid what he needs to do to make himself better at that route, or congratulate him, say, hey, great job. That's the way to come out of the break. That's exactly the way we want it to be run. Immediate feedback. And that stayed with me. That stayed with me my whole coaching career. And then the other thing that stayed with me, the second year I was helping Wayne Fonts with the secondary. And we had a guy, Artemis Parker, who played for the Jets for a lot of years, and Freddie Lynn. Freddie Lynn was a corner. He was the MVP and gosh darn for the
Boston Red Sox. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those are the kind of guys we're playing with, and so, the old dig post combination, the deep end breaking route, the post over the top against cover 3. Safety should be as deep as the deepest and not jump those in breaking routes so they don't throw the post over the top. Well, sure enough, we're out there. It's a spring practice and offense is out there, and Wayne and I are back with and Wayne was a phenomenal position coach. So that we run the dig, over the top combination, and Lynn's running that post over the top, and one other receiver's running the in breaking route. And here's Artemis, and Artemis is 6'3", 200 pounds, run like the wind. And Pat's back there, Hayden's back there at quarterback, and whether he looked at him with his eyes or gave him a little shoulder shrug to the in break, he got Artemis jumps all over that in breaking route. Goes Lynn, about 65 yards for a touchdown during a practice, kind of a scrimmage deal. And Coach McKay just goes nuts. And he was they used to have those big towers. They'd sit up in the towers, He comes down the stairs, and that was always bad. And he had one of those megaphones, and he put a Y on the end of your name if he liked, So, and he loved Wayne Fonts because Wayne was like Coach Majors would like, really enthusiastic, always running around the field, coaching every play. Hear this click, Wayne, Allie, you guys come over here. We're going, oh no. And Artemis, you come over here. So, and the whole practice stops. So Artemis Parker comes up. So Wayne comes over. So I'm like a little sheepdog, I'm standing next to Wayne behind him for a shield. And so Coach McKay goes, Wayne, he goes, what in the heck is going on? And he used some other expletives there too, He said, what the heck's going on? He said, didn't we just have that dig post combination? We're in cover 3. That safety's got to be as deep as the deepest. He cannot jump that in break in cover 3. What in the heck are you doing? What are you telling this guy? What are you teaching this guy? So Wayne goes, Coach, I told Artemis 100 times not to jump that dig route. If in any circumstances, come and react. The ball's got to travel in the air, make the tackle, but don't let that post go over the top of you. So Coach McKay, not a lit cigar, but cigar on the practice field. Allie, did Wayne tell 100 times? And I said, I'm going to be loyal to Wayne, right? Absolutely, Coach. You told him at least 100 times, And he looks at Artemis. He goes, Artemis, did Wayne tell you not to jump that in breaking route? And Artemis goes, yeah, Coach. He says, I really screwed up. I made a mistake. He goes, well, listen, boys. And he'll call everybody boys. But listen, boys, there's a difference between telling and teaching. He goes, Wayne, you told him 100 times. If he does it again, I'm going to find a guy that can teach him. And that was it. That lesson stayed with me my entire coaching career. Is immediate feedback, and there's a difference between telling and teaching. That's like a receiver drops the ball, catch the ball, where you're telling, hey, that didn't help him. Yeah. Teach him how to catch it, or teach him what he did wrong. And I think that goes for any profession, any walk of life. If you're a teacher, be able to communicate, be able to explain and teach the pupil what he needs to do in a math class, in an English class, at home, your children. It's easy to tell them what to do, but if you teach them what to do, it's like teaching that guy to fish, rather than giving him a fish. He fishes for the rest of his life rather than that one day. So that was and there was a lot of other things that I learned from Coach McKay, but those two things just really stick out in my mind as things that affected me, for my entire coaching career. And the way that I approached coaching and the way that I approached teaching is I always wanted to be knowledgeable. I studied forever and didn't agree with a lot of way people's coached and stuff, but I always wanted to know how to do it so that if I could help somebody else be better at what they do, because that's what a coach does. That's what a teacher does. And coaching is teaching. It's someone to do better, and there's Coach Major.
Before we get to some family talk here, and Al, I just want to ask you, all these great coaches that you've worked for, I mentioned their names in the intro. You said McKay and Mike White, Johnny Majors, then a great 38-year pro career. You're with Dick Vermeil and Don Coryell and Marty Schottenheimer, Joe Gibbs, and on and on and on. What did you see as your role of being like a second in command, and how you made those men better?
Oh, that's a good question, because I think all of them made me better. I don't know how much I influenced them to make them better, but I have a real respect for chain of command, and I think that comes from my father also. I always had a real respect for chain of command, and I had a real respect for loyalty. I was always very appreciative of the coaches that I worked for that allowed me the opportunity to work for them. And I always tried to be very, very supportive. I would never, at least to my knowledge or my recollection, if I ever disagreed with, and it was about saying the truth. Once again, my father always said, tell the truth and things will always be the same. But the other part of that is I always felt like I was able to tell the head football coach, those people, I always told them what I really felt, and I told them the truth. I didn't tell them what they wanted to hear, because I think a lot of people will tell, especially in an environment that's really competitive, like football, and you don't want to hurt, people are sensitive, and it's such an embattled profession. But I always felt like if I was truthful to the men that I worked for, and gave them my very best effort. No different than a swimming practice. Give your very best effort every lap you swim, and tried to impart to the people in the building and the players what their vision was and what they wanted to do. And each guy was a little bit different, you know.
Mm.
But I would never work for someone if I didn't feel like I could be 100% supportive of what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. So my hope would be that any of the head coaches that I've ever worked for would say that Al was really loyal, that he was an extremely hard worker, and that he always put the players first in terms of his feelings and emotions, and winning was really important, but the process of working with the individuals that he worked with was as much or more important than winning.
Well said. Great advice.
Coach,
that's
how
like,
did you?
that's like
Go ahead, Austin.
I got a little, these stories pop into my brain.
Oh,
It's like
go
you
ahead.
mentioned Mike White. My very first meeting, I'd come down from Utah State, our very first staff meeting with Mike White, just to show you how different perspectives are. And we only had 6 coaches, on the staffs. Now they've got about 25. we had some. Paul Hackett had just left to go to the University of Southern California as a quarterback coach, and I took his place at Cal. And we had Roger Theda was a terrific coach. Howard Mudd was Jim Erkenbeck, offensive line coaches. Walt Harris was our secondary coach. Milt Jackson was a receiver coach. We had some really good coaches on that staff. At least I thought. And so my first meeting with staff meeting with Mike's sitting at his desk. We were at Cal, and an old gym. It was just our offices were kind of shabby, but Mike sits back there and he goes, "Well, man," he goes, "I'm looking around this room." He goes, "I want you to know you have to be one of 2 things for me to work for me." Now, these other guys had been there for 3 or 4 years. This was my first meeting, my first minute in the Saunders staff. He goes, "The 2 things. Number 1, you either better be a great football coach or you better be a great recruiter." And he goes, "Looking around this room, and based on last year, I don't see any great football coaches. So every one of you guys better be great recruiters this year," or he says, "We're going to make some changes." I went, "Oh my God." Now all these other guys had heard it before, so I go, I call Karen. I says, "Honey," I said, we got to talk tonight. I don't know if I've done the right thing here. So I go home and I told her the story, and she goes, "Well, then you better be a great recruiter." So we went out and I recruited Rich Campbell, who ended up being the first quarterback taken, was a great kid, great player with Green Bay. And then we had a guy by the name of Gail Gilbert there that played. Yeah. Gail played 10 years in the league, and Art West from out in Montana, and Fred Bassani, and some great players. But I always remembered that because we had some good years. We didn't have great winning years all the time. So I thought, and we recruited by position, so I recruited the quarterbacks. So I thought, oh man, I better get a guy. I used to take Karen with me when she was pregnant to the moms, and all that stuff. And Karen was a better recruiter than I was, but it was a great experience. And Mike was so detailed, and he was such an eloquent speaker, and he was just tremendous to work for. He really bred that competition, not within the staff against each other, but it's like, the passing game was, we led the nation in passing in the top 5 every year that I was there. And part of it was, Mike worked at Stanford on the same staff. It was Mike, it was Dick Vermeil, it was Bill Walsh, it was John, Mora, Jim Mora, Jack Christensen. I mean, wow. They all those guys ended up being NFL coaches and were great coaches for a long period of time. So Mike was always ahead of the game. He's always studying with Bill. He was studying with Dick. Studying with Jim Mora, studying with Jack Christensen. And they just exchanged ideas all the time. And so Mike says, we're not SC and Washington and UCLA are probably always going to have better players than us. So we're going to do what they don't do. We're going to throw the football, because if we throw the football a whole lot, we can go out and recruit the best quarterbacks in America. We can recruit them from anywhere. And we can always recruit receivers. And we can teach kids to pass block, because we can't get big, strong offensive linemen like they're going to get at USC and UCLA, but we can teach them to stand in one place and be pass protectors, So we can hold them off long enough, And if we get a good running back or two, which we had Chuck Muncie, who wasn't a bad one, we can be a pretty good football team, and we were. And what Mike required us to do, my first year there, during the summer we had an assignment, and it was, when you come back to training camp, I want you to have written every single technique that you're going to teach the player that you coach. Every technique. And then I want you to explain how you're going to teach it.
Wow.
And then I want you to explain how you're going to test it. So it was teaching, it was determining what the technique was going to be, then how you're going to teach it, and how you're going to test it. Then I still have it somewhere. It was in a book form. It was published by the University of California Press. Nobody sold it, but we used to give it out at clinics and stuff like that. But I just thought about that. I thought, initially when we did, I thought, oh, God, this, what? But I'm so thorough, I like to think that I'm thorough in all my papers I ever did in school. So this thing was going to be like a doctoral dissertation, and I wrote it like that, and so did all the other stuff, because Mike would give it back to you and make you redo it if he didn't like it. So I wanted to, it was my first year there, I wanted to make sure that he was okay with the way I was teaching things, the way I was testing things, and that remained one of my quote Bibles of coaching the position that I always kept, and I always referred to it, and I always updated it, But Mike really made you a great teacher in terms of preparation. And that's probably what the thing I learned most from Mike was ability to recruit, that players do make a difference. And if you have the best players, you got the best chance to win on any level.
Yes.
Baseball, basketball, no matter what the sport, it doesn't guarantee it, but if you have the best players, you got the best chance to win. And Mike always used to say that. And then you better be able to teach them, because the players that aren't the best, they better be taught the best, and that whole thing about recruiting, identifying players, how you evaluate them, and then how you get them into your program, and then how you teach them. So it was a full scale, and that stayed with me. And that probably, going into the National Football League, made as big of an impression, or made, one of the most lasting impressions I ever had, the whole picture, and then you get into, like Johnny Majors, who you work for, Ken, and I have, so much respect for. He was, Johnny was, you talk about loyalty and about belief in a program, and about, we had Reggie White and all those guys, Willie Galt. When I was there at Tennessee, we had some great football teams, and I remember, and it was Reggie's junior year that I was there, and Reggie, maybe the greatest defensive lineman ever played, and Coach Majors had no problem demoting a guy if he didn't think he was given his greatest effort. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Our defensive coaches are coaching Reggie White, and Billy Bates was a safety. That's a great. I can't even remember all the players there, but we had a great defense. And Coach Majors got mad one day at Reggie White, and he says, "You will not play at the University of Tennessee if you don't respect that orange and white as much as I do." He says, and I respect it because we go 100% on everything we do. He says, and we were playing LSU the next week, I think it was. And I'm going, oh my God, he's going to bench Reggie White. Played LSU. Sure enough, he did not let Reggie practice for 2 days. And he said, you better prove to me, and we played on Saturday, so this had to be a Thursday. He says, you better prove to me today that you can play and win against LSU. He said that in a meeting, and he didn't meet with the team a lot, but
right.
I'm going, oh my God, this guy's unbelievable. And he said, I want movement.
Oh yeah.
to my USC days. I want movement. I don't want anybody standing around. Your drills better have everybody involved. I want movement on that.
I can hear him in my head. Flow and go, in and out, coach, in and out, on the move. You're exactly right.
He'd go up in that tower. I'm not sure what he had in that coffee cup up there, but he had everybody going, boy. And then the other thing, he was
Hey, Coach, this is a side note I wanted to. When did they stop going into towers, the head coaches?
I can't answer that. There was a time, I think maybe when the teams got littler. I think probably some people still do. I don't know, but when you think about it, and I'd never been up there other than after practice one time. I went up there just to see, just to look down there. But they used to have, there was a tower, so they didn't have to go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And there would generally be a field north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
And all the individual drills, if you were doing a drill, let's say, and Coach Majors was famous for this. Okay, say if I'm coaching the quarterbacks and we're maybe throwing one-on-one or something like that, and he wanted to see the quarterbacks, he would make us come down. The quarterback and center would be right under the tower, and the receivers would be out there. Or always like the inside run drill, the inside run game. You would take your group right. So he would be up there, but he could also look over. He had a view to the other side of the field, and he would. And this, Kenny, he grabbed that bullhorn, and you would. On the other side of the field, and he would say, "What are you teaching that man? Come over here." Bring our whole group over, right? So he could see, so he was always present. He was always present. And he had such a great affection for the knowledge of the place. That he loved the University of Tennessee. He loved Pitt when he won the national championship there.
Yep.
But once again, this first experience with the coach. So the first staff meeting I go to at Tennessee with Coach Majors, and we had Bobby Jackson and George Catavolis, Dom Capers, and we had some really good coaches there when I was there. And so the first staff meeting, he gives a test on. There were like 5 questions. The 3 of them were on the state of Tennessee, and 2 of them were on the University of Tennessee. Like the state of Tennessee, one was it founded? What does it mean to say? What does volunteer stand for? Who's the mascot? It's the Coon Tick Hound. It's not some volunteer, and he would every week, every Monday, we would have a test. And during the week, he would talk about stuff, so he expected you. If he said something about Tennessee, like, and back in 1971, we had a game against such and such and such and such and such, scored 2 touchdowns. And, and who's the best running back that ever played at the University of Tennessee? Well, you better put down Johnny Majors, right? I mean, so he was a Heisman runner-up. But anyway, long story short, And I, after a while, he and I had a great relationship because I respected him so much. And I said, Coach, it's interesting. You give these tests all the time. I says, why are you doing this? He goes, when you go out recruiting, I would expect the family that you're talking to would have questions about the university and about the state. He says, and you better have all of the answers. If you have any pride in the place you're working in, you should know a lot about it. And that to me would be the same in a corporation. If you're working in a corporation, in business, or you should know as much as you possibly can about the founding of that corporation, about what it is, what it's doing, what it does, what it believes in, so that if you're discussing with somebody else, you can represent the school or the organization the way it should be represented. And that's what really kind of just amazed me about Coach Majors and what he left with me is that if you're working, and it goes back to what you're asking about coaches, and being a second in command, that you do everything you can to know about and support the ideals and the direction that whoever you're working for is going. And I always felt like he really appreciated that. And he appreciated, wanting to learn about it. And that was the way he had to do that. I thought he was one of the best speakers. He and Marty Schottenheimer and Dick Vermeil. Dick is phenomenal in front of the team, but Marty was amazing. But Johnny, he would always, and I did this as a head coach. It was kind of a little different, but we would have the pregame Newt Rockney go get him talk. Johnny would do it after breakfast. We'd have the whole team pregame meal or the breakfast. And then everybody was sitting. A lot of guys didn't even eat breakfast, and they were always ticked. They had to go to breakfast to hear Johnny give a Newt Rockney. We never had it the night before, but after the meal, he did it, and he talked to the team. And he was, in the time that I was only there 1 year, because the year after I was there, I was offered a job at the San Diego Chargers, and that was kind of hard to turn down.
Yeah.
I would have stayed. I would have still been at Tennessee. I just loved it there so much. But Johnny had a great way of imparting onto the team. He called it you remember this, Kenny?
The game maxims, Nealon's game maxims.
That's what it is. And he used to
I heard him.
And he'd go through those the morning of the game. And then he'd always go on a little side story, and he would be so passionate about it. I used to get in that bus, and we drive from the hotel to the stadium, and I wished I was playing. I don't want to let this guy down. This means so much to him. The winning, the pride of Tennessee. His brothers went to school there. His brother was killed in a train wreck. Yeah, right.
Yes. Yes.
And Johnny was runner up to the Heisman Trophy from Tennessee. But just it really made an impression on me, the pride that you need to have with the organization you work with and the people you work with,
yes,
to enable yourself to really devote 100% of your effort and energy, to what you're doing.
Well, I know, Al, I got to thank you, because you were the one that got me my job with Johnny Majors. You made the call, and I had 4 years with Coach. Now, Austin, before, because we got to respect Coach's time here, we could talk for hours just hearing Coach, but I think you had a question you were starting to ask Coach before we get to the legacy.
Wait, the one thing I want to say about that, Kenny, that's why you tell the truth and not what the coach wants to hear. I told him the truth about you. A tremendous
thank you.
individual with great character and values, a great quarterback, and would do as good a job as anybody he could ever hire. And I know that he had a great deal of respect, because he called me a couple of times and thanked me for that recommendation.
Well, appreciate that, Al.
I can't remember off the top of my head, Dad. I can't remember it.
Well, I think that one of the things, Al, and this might be long-winded, I don't want to make you do that, but,
That's okay.
A lot of times, Austin and I are talking about this, you end up on a team that is not a good team, and you don't have the talent. What would be your words of wisdom to young coaches that are out there that maybe their job, they're on a team that's 1-9 and, or they're working in an environment that isn't positive? How would you encourage them, other than saying, we'll find a different job? What would you say to these young coaches?
Yeah, well, and I've been on a couple of those. I was on a 0-16 team in Cleveland. Okay. And I've also been on undefeated teams, and we've also won the Super Bowl, and with the direction of guys like Dick Vermeil, but the thing that I would say is, your job is to teach and coach and direct the players under your guidance the best you possibly can. There's always going to be a better player somewhere. There's always going to be a smarter person somewhere. There's always going to be someone who has more ability, but that's not your job. Be reminded what your head coach hired you to do. Your head coach hired you to do the best job you possibly can, to make the players that are under your guidance the best players they can possibly be. And we're not all perfect, and things are going to happen, but you can't get caught up. It's not about the wins and losses. Like I tell coaches that coach little league players, it's not about how many games you win. It's how many people want to come back and play the next year. What kind of impact have you had on young youth players that they want to come back because they enjoyed the experience? Okay. Yeah. Take one game as Marty would say, take one play at a time, take one game at a time, take 1 year at a time. But more importantly, understand what your role is. Your role is to take those receivers, those quarterbacks, that offensive line, those defensive backs, that defensive line, and help every one of those players be as good as their physical and mental and emotional ability will allow them to be. And if any one individual coach can say he does that with every single guy, with every single position, I think that'd be hard to do, because there's always somebody that needs you a little bit more. And if they play as well as they can play, and the other team plays as well as they can play, and that other team wins, so be it. That's just the way it is. But you can't dwell in the past. You can't worry about, oh my gosh, we're like teams in the NFL right now. Oh, we're 1-5. We're supposed to be a playoff team. You can't control that. What you can control is what's said in your meeting rooms, what you do on the practice field, how you help those players get better, and how you help them believe in themselves. I would never have played college football if I didn't have coaches at that level, on the freshman level, the Damon Baines, the Lanny Julius's, the people who crossed in my life, the John Webbs, that didn't allow me to feel like I could do it. You could be the strongest, the most single-minded person in the world, but we all need to know that somebody has faith in them. We all need to know that somebody believes in them, and we all need to know that they're going to tell you the truth. Hey, you need to develop this skill a little bit better, in order to be a productive player on this team. And if people do that, that's what young coaches should do. Focus on what your job is. And your job is to help the players that you coach be the best they can possibly be. It's not about you. It's about them. It's not about you. It's about them. And you will always be judged by how you teach, I think, and the success that your players have, and how much they appreciate you being around them.
We talk a lot about that in our ministry. And one of the greatest things I've learned over the last 15 years is that the most important person of your day is the one in front of you.
That's a great way to say it. That's right.
And I think if you walk through life that way, you are more intentional in touching the person that crosses your path. And you never know what that, relationship's going to look like. I mean, I look at you and I, we were together in 1990. And you were gracious enough today to join us to do this 30 some years later. You just never know how you will touch someone or someone will touch you. But if your focus is on how important they are in front of you, you got a shot.
Well, I even think
let's talk.
I even think about like your. Go ahead, Coach.
No, I was just going to say, and saying that, of course, a lot of things go through my mind, and the opportunity to work in the NFL, the Don Coryells, who, always said, put people in positions. Don't ever ask somebody to do what they can't do. Put them in positions where they can have success and enjoy the game, and Marty Schottenheimer, one play at a time, focus, and Dick Vermeil, Joe Gibbs, John Harbaugh. I've been so lucky to work for so many great people. But in light of what you're saying right here, the coach that who still remains a dear friend to this day, Dick Vermeil, the quality that he was a great football coach, no question about the X's and O's, but he had at his Hall of Fame introduction, people asked me, what is it that you remember most about Dick Vermeil and what kind of person he is in terms of being a football coach? And I said, Dick Vermeil has a way of giving everybody value. It doesn't matter if you're the offensive coordinator, if you're the custodian, if you're lining the field, if you're the owner. He had a tremendous passion for people, and you always felt valued. And I think as a young coach, in the question that you asked, you've got to make your players feel valued. You can't have, whether he's a first team guy or a third team guy, whether he's having a good year or a bad year, you have to value that human being. It's not just what he is as a football player. You have to value that human being and make him feel, when he comes into your meeting room, that he's valued. that
Yeah.
he's not somebody, oh, you're not playing very good. Let's get him out of here. And as a position coach, everybody's a position coach. Even if you're a coordinator, you're a position coach. If you're a head coach, you're a position coach, because you can coach any position you want at any time. But
Yeah.
Dick Vermeil won on every level he's ever coached and has so many people that are so indebted to him for their coaching and playing careers because he gave everybody value. And I would
Mm.
like to think myself as a coach, and he used to say this, you treat everybody like a first round draft choice. Don't treat anybody like a walk on or like a non-scholarship player or like a free agent. Everybody that walks into your room, you treat them and teach them like a first round draft choice because that's how they've got to think about themselves when they leave your meeting room.
Wow.
And that's just, it goes back to the question of how do you approach young players? You love them. And Dick would be the first to say, you never, ever feel like you can't tell someone you love them. Male, female, older, younger, players, coaches, because truly you should. If you're a coach and you're a teacher, you better love all your students and they better know that the other thing you say is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mm-hmm.
I've always remembered that. And when you think about it, you as a player, Kenny, if you knew that a coach really cared for you and really wanted you to have success. Now, whether you could reach that or not is another thing, versus a coach that you didn't think really was concerned about your career, that really didn't have your best feelings at heart, that didn't have that interpersonal relationship that you need from your parents, from your coaches, from your teachers, from your siblings. If you have that feeling all together that person cares about you, then you'll care about what they say.
Mm.
Wow.
Austin, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just,
Sorry,
I
Austin, I
thought,
didn't mean to.
oh no,
I'm at my age now.
I,
Things go in one ear, they go in one side of my brain and come
no,
out the other. So I have to get to them real quick.
no, because it was back to the question that I had a long time ago. Because once again, I'm just soaking in. I mean, you got so much wisdom, Coach, and I've been in this profession for about 13 years, but I got so much, more to learn. And as you work for different coaches, who obviously they're different people, and each person has different, priorities, different beliefs, different things. How did you adapt and work under each one of them to still be the person that you are as you coach, but also, be loyal and do the best job for each individual person who you coach for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never really put much thought into that particular thing, but I would say that as Kenny and you both, at the beginning of this podcast, talking about my family, I think it started from my father and watching the way he approached his work and his family. It's my greatest attribute in my life has been my wife. She has sacrificed so much and done so much for our family. She's been the mother and father because, can't get in the office at 6 a.m. and leaving at 10, 11 at night and never having a day off from the beginning of June all the way to February in the National Football League. My wife has been the rock of our family. And, so taking all of those emotions that you have, and she allowed me to be the kind of person I wanted to be in my profession. She never drew me away from the profession or ever complained that, hey, you're never here to do this. You don't take the kids to baseball practice or football, but you're never around. She understood, and she took that role. And I think in my life, I've appreciated kind of being that person for the head coach that I worked for. I know consciously, I never wanted to be in a position where I created an issue for a head coach that was going to take time away from his day or take time away from his job. I always tried to mend the things, try to fix any problems or anything within my position group or my unit, without having to call on him and his time, and therefore be as loyal as I possibly could. And what, Marty Schottenheimer, I remember the first meeting we had with him, he got up in front of the team, and I just come from Don Coryell, right? The greatest offense in the history of football, with Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow and Charlie Joyner and Wes Chandler and Chuck Muncie. And, we said we led the league in offense for 6 straight years with Ernie Zampese as the coordinator. And Joe Gibbs was there on the staff for a period of time, some tremendous coaches. And I remember Marty, and so we were Air Coryell, right? We threw the ball all over. Dan was throwing for until he got old and and got beat up so much. He was throwing for more yards than anybody in the history of the game at the time. And Marty's first meeting, I'll never forget. Marty gets up, and Marty was 6'3", 240. A really imposing character, a great voice, commanded a room. When he walked into a room, you listened, right, Kenny? I mean,
yes.
He was gonna give you information you could use. He wasn't gonna waste your time. It was gonna be a short meeting, and it was gonna be done, and you were gonna be gone. But you were gonna listen. And so is the first meeting. He gets up and he goes, "Men," he goes, "my football team, offensively, we play to kick the ball." And I go, "What?" He goes, "We kick PATs, we kick field goals, and we punt. And at the end of an offensive drive, if you do any one of those 3 things, I am the happiest head coach there ever will be. You kick a PAT, you field goal, or you punt." He said, "That's what I want from my offense." He says, "We're going to win playing defense and special teams. Offense, don't screw it up." And he walked out. I just came from Star Wars offense where Don's philosophy was, we're going to score as many points as we possibly can in the first half. And then we're going to come back in the locker room and decide how to play the game. And that's exactly what he said. We're going to score as many. Then he never talked about interceptions. He never talked about turnovers because they're going to happen. So I said, Dan would, I think he majored in interceptions the last 4 or 5 years of his career, but the quarterbacks played thought free, and they took chances and threw the ball into tight windows. But for the most part, you were successful. And if we came in at halftime and we were 14 points ahead, Chuck, you're getting the ball about 20 times in this last half, or Hank Bauer, we're going to give you the ball a few times, and if we're down by 5 or 6 or down by 10, we're throwing the ball every damn down. Charlie, Kellen, Wes, you guys get open because Danny's going to put that ball up in the air, So that's kind of the way things kind of transpired throughout. And Marty was great, but boy, that shocked me when he said that. But that was his philosophy. So what I did as a receiver coach, we blocked our rear end off. Our guys we had little guys. We had J.J. Burton. We had Willie Davis. We had little guys, There was 5'8", and Willie was 6 feet, but he was about 150 pounds. J.J. was little, We had Stephon Page, was a bigger side. Carlos Carson, when he first came, were really good receivers. But in my meeting, we spent time talking about blocking. We cut guys. We had safeties in our division, the Steve Atwaters and the Ronnie Lotts that were 240 pounds. And we had Christian Okoye as a running back coach, as our runner. So Christian was 260. And those defensive guys would always come and cut Christian down and all this stuff. And before the games, receiver or defensive backs would come up to me and say, "Al, you're not going to cut us, are you?" I says, "Absolutely. The first time you go low on Christian Okoye, we're coming low every single time." I've got 160-pound receivers and you're 225 pounds. Come on, Ronnie. And it was so much fun. But what I wanted to do, I wanted to have my receivers catch, 100 balls a year and catch 1,000 yards in passes, because then you look like a pretty good receivers coach, right?
Yeah.
We might have thrown the ball 20 times a game. We had Steve DeBerg back there. We had a bunch of guys that had played a lot of years in the league and were just terrific quarterbacks, unselfish guys. And our receivers blocked, and they were the best blockers in the NFL. I got called into the league office twice saying that we need to change our style of the way we block because our receivers are cutting everybody low and it's dangerous. I said, that rule, then change the rule.
Yeah.
But I've got 160-pound receivers blocking 230-pound safeties who are trying to tackle a 260-pound running back. I says, our job is to keep those DBs off of Christian Okoye and Marcus Allen. So we can't do it standing up like this, But anyway, so that's what I did. I coached the way Marty wanted those players to be coached. That's what we did. Now, I go to St. Louis. Dick Vermeil is the head coach. We incorporated Mike Martz.
Greatest show on turf.
Greatest show on turf. Kurt Warner threw the ball like crazy. We had I'm trying to think now. Our receivers.
Isaac Holt.
Isaac
Holt.
Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt.
Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, yeah.
And Ricky Prohl and Oz Hakeem. We had some great guys. Now, those guys weren't killer blockers, but they sure caught the heck out of the ball. But I demanded them. We had Marshall Faulk as running back, right? Yeah. I demanded that they block. Now, we didn't cut anybody. We stayed up. We shielded everybody. But we worked and they were just as proud of that when Marshall Faulk got introduced into the Hall of Fame. He paid credit to the receivers that ended up being his most advocated blockers down the field. And our guys loved to block for him. We did it in practice. I'd chase those guys down the field and tell them to get in front and just give Marshall that much of a chance. And, that's the way it happened. But I did that for Dick because that's the way Dick wanted his receivers to be coached. He wanted them to catch the ball, run after the catch, and help out in the run game when they're called on to do that. And that's just the way I've always been. And I think that because it's not treat people the way you want to be treated. It's treat people the way they want to be treated. And I think there's a big difference in that because we all have different philosophies. We all have different values. We all have different acceptances of success and failure, but that's us. Kenny has different than me and Austin, you have different than me and we're just a little different. But if I treated Kenny the way he wants to be treated and I treated you the way you wanted to be treated, there's a real difference there. Because it might not be the way I wanted to be treated. Some guys, Kenny, some guys you can coach hard. Some guys you can yell at. You can get up in their face and demand a better performance because that's what they need. And there's other guys you got to put your arm around and love them and work with them that way because that's the way they want to be treated. They respond to positive feedback. Other guys respond to, criticism and harsh coaching and demanding. We're all different. And that's the thing I would tell to your young coaches that you asked about before. Treat your players the way they want to be treated, not the way you want to be treated. And you can work it out so you come together. And the way you want to treat them is important because once again, they don't want to know how much you know until they know how much you care.
And before we close, and I want to give you, because I know you're proud, you've already mentioned your bride and the influence she's had on your life, but I know you're a proud father and a grandfather. So before we get to our final statement and words, tell us a little bit quickly about your children now and your grandkids.
I'm blessed with 3 of the greatest children. Once again, kudos to my wife because she raised them. 3 of the greatest kids you could ever want, and they have 3 of the greatest spouses anybody could ever want. I'm so blessed that way. My oldest son, Bob, coached in the NFL for several years. He also coached in the USFL. He's a stay-at-home dad this year because there are some changes that were made in the USFL, and his head coach, Todd Haley, didn't get a job again. So Bob's taken a year off, but he's everything that anybody could ever want as a son. Father of 4 great-grandchildren, 12, 8, 6, and 3, who are the joy of my life. The stage of retirement, I have an opportunity to spend time with my grandkids. We've got a sleepover tonight with one. Tomorrow we have a sleepover with another one. And then Monday I'm headed to Cleveland to spend 4 days with the other 3, or the other 4, excuse me. We have
good.
My daughter is a PhD in clinical psychology. She's a doctor of psychology, lives in Washington, D.C., and They have a little 3-year-old who's just really special. And then my youngest son is a film director. He worked for Netflix for a long time, and they moved out from L.A. To 20 miles from us. He has a project that he was doing. His wife is from England, so I've got some royal blood back in my family. All her family's still there. She was an attorney, a barista over there, and came over here now with Joey a few years ago. They lived in LA because of his business, but the project allowed him to move somewhere, anywhere for 2 or 3 years. He's really good on all this technology. I'm not. So they made an investment. They bought a house about 20 minutes from us. In fact, she should be upstairs right now. She had a little 3-year-old, had a ballet lesson, waiting for Grandpa to come and take her to the animal park this afternoon. But
Good.
my children, once again, I try to stress to them what my father stressed to me is health and education. They've all got advanced degrees and have all done really well in their profession, and I think they're very focused and hardworking kids, and they all picked great partners, and they all had great children, and I'm really fortunate, and thank goodness they've taken after my wife, because she's a saint.
Well, as we close, Al, with all the relationships that you've made in your 50-year coaching career, how does Al Saunders want to be remembered?
Wow, I would hope that from players, coaches, friends, associates, the thing that comes to my mind, probably as much as anything, is that I have a great deal of loyalty to friends and associates. I'm still in great contact with my old college roommates, Steve Austin, Bob Carter, Sandy Fish, Jim DiDiego, Larry Malone, guys that I grew up with in college, and many of my high school friends. Always try to stay in touch with them, as I've learned from Dick Vermeil that staying in touch with people is really important, because that's what your life is. It's relationships. It's not
Yes.
monetary success or business success. It's about relationships and about being with people and helping them when they need. Fraternity that I was in college, ironically enough, our motto was extend a helping hand to all who seek it. And I've tried to live by that. So I would hope that my friends would think I'm very loyal. The players would think that I was a very hard worker, and the coaches that I worked with worked hard to try to be the best version of myself that I could be. And hopefully they would think that I wasn't selfish in what I did, but I did things in my profession and within my family to have a betterment and a better life for them. Just like my father said when he came to the United States, the reason that he came to the United States was for a better opportunity for his children. And that proved to be factual. I mean, we have much better opportunity here in the United States of America than we would have had growing up in the United Kingdom at that time. So loyalty, hardworking, not selfish, and dedicated to the people that I've had the opportunity to call dear friends and to be around, and that I hope my grandkids would say I'm a great grandpa.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do final words. Is there anything that maybe is on your heart that Austin and I didn't ask you, or you just wanted to share in closing, and then Austin will share something and I'll wrap us up?
No, it was really enjoyable for me to think about some of these things that consciously I certainly don't think about on a daily basis, at least expressing them. I don't know that I've ever expressed what I've expressed here in this short period of time. And then certainly when we go our ways, I'm going to think of so many people that I needed to mention that have been really strong parts of my life. My heroes in life are the coaches that I've worked for, the players that I've worked with, and my dear friends, Steve and Sandy and Bob Carter and Jim DiDiego and others that Larry Malone, people that I went to school with and lived with and spent some really formative time in my life in high school and college. The great coaches that I've been exposed to as a player, the Dr. Bronsons, the Harry Andersons, the John Webbs, all of whom I was able to pay my respects to at their memorial services. Bob Tichenor, just I've been so blessed to have people in my life that have given me direction, both spiritually, uh, vocationally, and in every other way. And I would just want to say that thank you so much to everybody that I've mentioned or haven't mentioned. And this would have to be a 10-hour podcast for me to be able to gratitude. Just know that whether I did have an opportunity to mention you or I haven't, I love you dearly, and I really appreciate everything you've done to make my life the enjoyable trip on this earth that I've had.
Hmm.
Coach, I'm just thankful for the time that you've provided both my dad and I. I mean, first
Yes.
off, my dad has always spoken very highly of you. I know he played for under you at Kansas City, and then has just followed your career and been in contact with you. You've helped him out. You were always someone that I looked up to from afar, and just you know people who are listening. I mean, we had some technical difficulties. This is actually the second time we've got to talk, and not many people. I mean, you were willing to take the time to share your heart and your mind and to help us out, and not many people would do that. So I mean, you are very selfless and caring and special person just to think of two guys just like us who are just doing this thing and then just overall just thinking through the things that you've gone through in your life. And one of the things that hit me listening was just that family that helped pay for you to get over to Canada, and then they sponsored you coming to America. It made me think, Dad, about how Jesus loved the people along the way, the person in front of you, everything you talked about in coaching. Just they were along the way on a ship with you guys, and here you are as one of the great or NFL coaches, college coaches, and you know and they didn't know that. They just loved you in the moment that you were in. And
Corey and Francis Whitaker, I'll never forget them.
absolutely. And just to think that they did made a choice that they were thinking they were being kind, and just the impact it had on you. It's just a great reminder. And then just how you've worked for people and how you speak so highly of people, and how you've given so much great energy and enthusiasm and the wisdom that you provided today. I mean, I know for me, there's things that I'm going to take away and just continue to on my coaching journey. Just try to emulate some of the things that you do, and I'm just thankful for who you are, Coach, and what you mean to my family, um, and and just your heart to share your story. And I know people, if they're wise enough to listen, there's a lot to glean from who you are and what you've done.
Well, Austin, thank you so much. I'm a little bit of an emotional guy, not quite like Marty and Dick, but but I can get a little emotional. And you did, both you and Kenny, your dad, did for me what Dick Vermeil does for everybody. And it's why I appreciate Dick so much. Is today, um, excuse me, you gave me value, and excuse me, getting older, but for people to feel like you are valued, especially in the later part of your life, when you start thinking about your own mortality a little bit,
Yeah.
um, to know that somebody has valued something that you have said
Yeah.
or that you've experienced, really, I can't tell you how much that means to me. That you and your dad would want to talk to me, that would want to give me this opportunity to express some of the things that I've really not expressed to anybody, especially in a public forum. Um, you gave me value. You gave me purpose today. And from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that very much, because when I get off this podcast, I'm going right upstairs and being with somebody else, a little 3-year-old,
Yeah.
that
Who values you.
she doesn't care if I'm Charles Manson. She loves her grandpa. So immediately, it's unconditional love. And it's an expression that a lot of people talk about or a lot of people say, but until you really feel it, you don't really know what it is. And this opportunity with the both of you today, thank you.
Well, Coach, I mean,
Well, Al,
Matt, can I say something too, real quick?
yes.
It's just, one, I think that value thing you're talking about, what Dick Vermeil says, and it's something we're all searching for is the first thing, and and us as coaches or teachers or people that, really what we're modeling is what I believe that God has provided us is He has given us value and worth because we're His. And I think as we are, unfortunately, and this is, I've watched this with my dad's career and coach. I know you've had a great career. You've done amazing things, but unfortunately, I feel like as a young coach just from what I've witnessed is we kind of push the older coaches out the door, and we forget of all the experiences and wisdom and and uh, and 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 what they can still bring to the table to us as young coaches, and we forget, and we think about the cool way to run an RPO or stuff like that, and instead of taking the time to listen to the experience of, yes, that's important, giving great energy and effort. But like you said, the ability to see people and to draw out their value and to have belief and draw the best versions of themselves. That's stuff that's eternal. And I think, unfortunately, us as young coaches, we're blinded to that. So I hope, whoever listens to this, that maybe a young guy takes your wisdom. So go ahead, Dad. Sorry.
Well, I know that little young lady wants her grandpa, so I'm gonna close this.
Well,
Hello,
Austin. I'll say this on what you just said, and this is another Dick Vermeil. You can't teach experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't teach what you don't know, so you better be a studier. And you can't teach experience. So the experience that you have, the best thing to do is share it with the people that you love. Just like here, who gets
let me let you get to your granddaughter, but I just want to say this, Al, and my final words to you is, number one, I see a person that's genuine, and I've seen that now for 30 years. You're genuine, and you have a passionate love for those that you encounter. You make the person that you're with feel important and valued as well. So we just want to thank you for allowing us to share your story with our listeners at Awaken Kingdom Culture, where hearts and minds come alive, one story at a time.